I'd like to introduce Kevin McManus. Kevin is a senior technical account manager at Everbridge and an active 911 dispatcher with more than 30 years of experience in emergency communications and public safety. His background spans emergency management, homeland security, and incident communications, giving him a unique perspective on designing and operating effective alert and warning systems. Kevin, welcome to tonight's webinar.
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to spend a little bit of time with you today. As Michael had mentioned, my role is kind of to put messaging to the public, messaging to employees, kind of in one bucket. I am a contractor to the state of Connecticut. I work for the company Everbridge. But when we go through these slides today, these kind of apply to any messaging program, any system you have going forward. So it's not anything that's proprietary. The concepts behind this are all real going forward. One of the big things that I'll reiterate is going forward is messaging is your chance. It's your chance to communicate with the public when something's happening. You have one chance to get that message right. However, you have many chances to get that wrong. We need to be careful when we're doing messaging, weather events, hazardous materials incidents, missing persons, infrastructure failures, and all the way down to those routine day-to-day messaging. The continuity of a message, the different platforms we're sending it on, the reliability of the system, absolutely is a key factor when we communicate. Nothing that I kind of made up, but I always like to reiterate that we're always sending the right message to the right people at the right time using the right methods. And we'll get into that a little bit as we go along this journey here. So CT Alert in Connecticut is the program name. There's a couple different facets to it. In the Connecticut system, the contract that they have with us kind of breaks mass notification into 3 sections, and we'll break out a little bit into each one. The first one is for the state of Connecticut employees, keeping them safe. That might be building emergencies. That might be snow days. Many of our state agencies, including DEMIS, use it to communicate with their downstream partners. So if you happen to be in an emergency management role, you could get notifications from DEMIS about when things are happening. So kind of keeping the employees informed when they're away from their normal communications. We also have the ability, all the 911 centers across the state have the ability to use the state system for similar, keeping their employees, the people that they're responsible for, notified and updated. And that could include CERT members in certain instances. There are also some municipal instances. We'll talk a little bit about that lower level messaging going forward that communities have available to them. And then there's the one that everyone kind of thinks of, CT Alert. That's the mass notification, the reverse 911. So in 2009, a couple people got around the table and said, we have no good single way to get a hold of everybody in Connecticut when something as bad has happened. So they reached out, and Connecticut chose Everbridge as the vendor. And since 2009, we have been that mass notification platform. So people refer to us sometimes as a reverse 911, CT Alert, robocalls, etc. It all kind of falls underneath the program that I'm responsible for administrating, which is the CT Alert. So in my little lollipop here, these are the kinds of ways that we can notify people. And we're going to break out what do we use each one for going forward. The mass notification for public alert and warning, notifications through Everbridge, are primarily those phone calls, those reverse 911s as we used to refer to them as. Text messaging, mobile apps have become a huge factor. It's just amazing how many people are adopting apps over everything else. And then traditional email notifications. Every delivery path, every which one of these modalities has its strengths and has its weaknesses going forward. So let's talk a little bit about mass notification and CT Alert. Well, simply that allows an emergency management professional, a 911 dispatcher, somebody from emergency management, to take a map, a geographical map, and simply draw a shape on that map and notify the people that are there. Now, consider this: people that live, they're registered, they have a business, or they're associated. CT Alert at this level in mass notification does not take into account that transient population, people that might be visitors, people that are vacationing, they're shopping in this area. And that's something that we always want everybody to be aware of, the different levels of notification. And I do have a slide that kind of breaks this in one thing going forward. But This is our database for Reverse 911. Something's happening in Middletown. They decide that they need to notify all the residents or all the businesses or people that are registered in a block in a couple square miles. They can draw that shape, and then they can launch that notification to that people. They can do it by voice, text, email, mobile app, or anything along those lines. That is a program that I spend many hours a month training our 911 dispatchers in. Just being able to use that platform to draw a circle on a map and give people an effective message is about a 3-hour training program. And there are some caveats about access. Again, the information, the databases that we get information are pretty deep. In the Connecticut system, we have over 5 million residential and business contacts across the state. That information comes from sources such as E911 databases, commercially sourced information from Office of Early Childhood and Daycare, and then people who actually go to the ctalert.gov website and proactively sign up. They provide us all their information and where they live going forward. So this is kind of the main part of the CT Alert, why this whole program was built. I'm going to say, fortunately, we probably only do about 65 to 75 CT Alert life safety notifications a year. That's kind of a good thing. Knock on wood a little bit here. Because if we're doing messaging, that means somebody someplace is having a bad day going forward. The second one is kind of that agency notifications. How do we push messages out to our employees, to our staff? We can do other things. We can post to social media. We have the ability to do desktop alerting, being able to push that information even further downstream. I apologize, I went the wrong direction in that slide there. And then kind of going up the scale on the other side is that IPAWS. People might have heard of public alert and warning systems, commonly known as the EAS, Emergency Alert System. That's when your TV makes that annoying sound and it takes over your favorite program. Or no matter where you are, you get forced a text message, and it's usually a short one, wakes you up in the middle of the night. Traditionally, those messages come from National Weather Service or Amber Alerts, and we'll dig a little bit further into it going forward. But that's primarily the portions of public alert and warning and employee warning that we utilize. Here's an example that we actually had about a week-long status of messaging. So this was the Hawthorne fire on Lamentation Mountains. And not that we had a lot of people to notify to leave the area, even though there were spectators and there were people up there camping. We needed to let people know in that area, number one, that we were there. And this was an odd message. This was a no-fly zone for drones. Everybody wanted to get a picture. So how do you tell people that are miles away to don't fly your drone where helicopters are? So we actually utilized the IPAWS, the wireless emergency alerts, and anybody that was in that shape would get notified, whether they lived there or not. If they wandered through the area, they would get the alert. So if you happen to be driving up and down 515 during those fires, I apologize if your phone went off, but we did that for a series of days, again, alerting the public going forward. Something recently that we had, this was if you're up some of the border towns in Tolland County, we had a wander away special needs individual from Munson, Massachusetts. And while Massachusetts was doing messaging, they don't have the authority to message in Connecticut. While the cell phone towers will cross the lines a little bit, they are not allowed to message basically on behalf of the state of Connecticut. So this was one of those instances when we said, you know what, we have to get with the Massachusetts emergency management folks. We need to make sure our messaging matches, because when we send a message, it's going to impact people in Massachusetts and vice versa. So this was one of those ones that I think this was 2 days worth of messaging that we did. The youth was actually located here in Connecticut, just over the border. But this is one of those things where this is pretty impactful messaging. People did not sign up for this. And that's where we kind of have to be careful when we get going. So I've talked about a handful of different communications, different ways we can notify people. And I intentionally built this slide out. It is confusing. When I get a phone call, Kevin, I need to put out a message. There are so many questions I have for you. What is your audience? What are you trying to do? How priority is this emergency? Is this because the library is closed today and you can't use it as a cooling location? Or is this because there's a green cloud of gas coming over the municipality going forward? This is where we have to use that right tool, the right message, the right way going forward. If we used every system at our disposal for every alert, everybody would unsubscribe, unfortunately. We've been able to see those metrics. Unfortunately, during COVID, when we were 6, 8, 10 months into COVID, and people were still getting alert messages to stay 6 feet apart and wear a mask, people started unsubscribing from alerts. And I understand that, you didn't need to hear that. Some people had some pretty bad times. They didn't need to be reminded of it. But now when we needed to use that tool in an emergency that wasn't COVID related, or we need to put out a message about flooding or something along those lines, or an Amber Alert, and people may have unsubscribed, they don't get notified. So in Connecticut, we actually hold emergency alert messaging, specifically the IPAWS, the Wireless Alerts and EAS system, very close to DEMIS. And we look at every one of those messages before we get a request to send it out. So again, when somebody calls me, I try to match the delivery methods. What are we going to use? Is something going to be just adequate with a web post? Or do we need to go all the other way of the spectrum to that IPAWS that I'm going to impact everybody who's in that area on their phone, their email, and text messaging. We don't want them to stop and unsubscribe. So Connecticut, we kind of work on this kind of scale going forward. And this isn't anything scientific. This is just something we kind of put together for training so we can kind of build out our messages and notifications of what tools, where does your message kind of sit when we go forward. We want to use the least intrusive amount of communications and least intrusive tools when messaging needs to come out. So we talk about your routine notifications. This is something that every municipality has some way to communicate with today. They don't even need to get into CT Alert or the mass notification program. They can post their messages on their municipal website, their social media. They might have their own list of folks. They might have a comment app. These might be general information. Something's happening at town hall. Voting locations have changed. Hey, don't forget there's going to be a special event on the town green. They haven't elevated to that level. Normally, these are subscribers, people who have proactively signed up for the community. They want to hear from the community about all their happenings going forward. So a municipality can do it in their own system. I mean, obviously, we do have ways we can do it too, but that's kind of that low level, the least intrusive going forward, including social media. Then we might get to something that starts to escalate a bit. This might be one of those, hey, there's trees down on your road and you live on a dead-end street, and we want to let everybody at the end of that dead-end street know. While some people might say, well, I think I have people who have medical conditions down there, they need to know. Again, we'll look at, what is the impact, how many people live in a neighborhood, and decide if you're still going to, use your social medias and maybe the telephone database, maybe just the 911 database that we have access to going forward. So this is kind of where that, it's everybody treats an emergency a little bit differently. But this is still within the normal notification level that a municipality can use their own messaging systems for. Now we get into that CT Alert, and we have some criteria behind that. These are the evacuations, the shelter in place, immediate life safety. I always like to just kind of run the duck, cover, shelter, evacuate, hide kind of messaging. Something's happening bad, something's happening now. And we actually allow access for CT Alert to be sent from the municipal 911 center. In some circumstances, the emergency management officials, if they have that relationship with the 911 center. But the state does not have to get involved. You don't need to wake up the DEMIS regional coordinators to launch these notifications. So this is available at the local municipal level. Again, this is that large resident connection database that I was showing you, the 5 million contacts across the state. But again, this does not account for a visitor, a tourist, somebody that's at your beaches, somebody that's camping in your neighborhood. These are the people that are dots on a map. They're in the database already. And then, of course, we do have access to the IPAWS, the Public Alert and Warning. Agencies that have access to this traditionally are the National Weather Service, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They're the ones that launch Amber Alerts for the state of Connecticut. The U.S. Coast Guard actually has the ability to initiate wireless emergency alerts along the shore or over Long Island Sound. So maybe disabled or missing boaters, they do have that ability. State of Connecticut Emergency Management, of course, we review every notification. And then there is the presidential alert. I think it was 2.5 years ago. They did that nationwide test, and that's how that message was sent out. That's kind of where we kind of grade our notifications. Again, I'll reiterate, every message is a little bit different going forward. So in the Connecticut system, what do we look at? What kind of constitutes that alert? Well, we break it out into those 6 bullet points you see on the screen. I'm not going to go into each one of them, but again, is my messaging likely going to be able to save life, save property? Are there other ways that I can send that same message and save using CT Alert? And that's where people kind of say, well, not everybody's going to monitor their social media all the time. No one's going to open up their email. They don't have it sitting in front of them 24/7. The old rule of thumb was, would you send an emergency responder down a strange street, knocking on doors in the middle of the night to give a message? That's kind of a high threshold in days. Strangers coming and knocking on the door to give a message. If the answer to that is yes, then absolutely 100% mass notification, in our case, CT Alert, is the right tool to deliver that message and then kind of roll backwards from there. Some of the other things are, if you have a road that's impacted, do we need to send that message out to the residents on that road at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? Are we waking them up to tell them that? Or would this be something that might be a little bit better to hold off to 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and let them know that their road is impassable going forward? So you have to take all that into account. You need to balance all that, again, making sure that your message is going the right way at the right time. We always talk about those other means. Is there another tool in our toolbox? Maybe we're just looking at a certain target audience. Maybe it's a small call list that we need to reach out to. We don't need a mass notification tool going forward. So there's a handful of kind of criteria that we look at going forward. Do we or don't we do a message? Now, alert messaging is not a public information platform. It's not a press release. It's not the town CEO's statement or the EMD's statement about recovery and what they can do. Mass notification is that short kind of messaging. Something's happening. This is what you need to do. This is where you need to go. And we kind of look at this 3-3-30 rule of the 3 key points of the message, what's important, in 3 sentences, and we need to keep that in 30 words, 30 seconds. Imagine that you get an unsolicited phone call, you don't know what the number is, or you do, and it says CT Alert, and you answer it, and the first thing you hear is saying, there's a green cloud of gas headed towards your neighborhood right now. This is what I need you to do. You're probably going to listen to about the first 12 to 15 seconds of that message and then take action. So if I went on for 3 or 4 minutes talking about where all the shelters are and the locations and how you should use eye wash stations, people are going to hang up. They're going to already take action. So in order for us to make sure that our messages go out in mass notification in an emergency or a high priority, we kind of stick by this 3-3-30 rule, trying to get that out to them with the facts, what's going on, and this is what you need to do pretty quickly going forward. How do we build a message? Well, it's the who, what, where, when, whys, and hows, but just kind of modified a little bit. These are strange calls. You don't know who's calling you. You don't know if this is some prankster or somebody trying to sell you car insurance over the phone at the same time. So we always want to identify our agency. We've posted the CT Alert telephone number so many times on so many websites, but anytime we do a large CT Alert notification, people mark it as spam. People mark it as a robocall. So we work with some of the vendors. We try to get that spam taken off of the calls. It's not an easy thing to do. But by being able to identify the agency that's sending the message, whether it's a text, whether it's an email, this is a message from Connecticut Emergency Management. Okay, I might take a couple seconds to listen to what's going on. And then what is going on? We don't want to sugarcoat alert and warning, but we don't also want to be horrific and scare people. Law enforcement is probably one of the most difficult things to send messages for, because of a tactical operations, things that we're working on. They might want to keep things close to their heart. They might want to say, I want to just let people know that we're in the area and stay indoors, and we don't want to tell them exactly what's going on. So that's our threat. But again, we can't sugarcoat it. We want to be able to give them enough information so people don't end up on social media or any of the other apps providing wrong information. We want to say where this is happening. Using landmarks, that's one of the best things. This is happening in the town of wherever, on Main Street, near the Walmart. That's a pretty good landmark versus giving out a random address that nobody's going to be able to associate with. Messages that say there's an emergency in your area. Well, I said before that I might not be home and I could be getting this message through the CT alert program. And I don't know if it's in my area or if it's in my home area. So again, we need to describe that. Where is this emergency happening? Now that we've gotten their attention, we told them what's going on and where it's happening. What do they need to do? Again, this is not just something bad is happening in your neighborhood. We need to provide them instructions. And that's very important. That's very creative. One of the things that people in emergency management need to remember is once you, as the authority, start giving instructions, you essentially own that audience, those people that you are messaging going forward. So going forward, it's one of these, how do you give people the information with the instructions of what to do, but still be on that kind of line where, stay at home or evacuate. If you tell them to evacuate, you need to tell them where. So it's not just a quick message that goes out forward. And then when. This could be until further notice going forward, but it's one of those things, if you are going to put a time frame on this, if you're giving instructions, and we'll talk a little bit closer at the end on the closeout of a message, you need to keep them informed. 4 hours into a shelter in place due to police activity in your neighborhood, and there's been no update from the authority, from the agency, that's when people start getting restless. They start looking at social media. They start sticking their heads out the door, and that's not what we want to do. So if we give them instructions, we need to be able to keep them updated going forward. Here's kind of an example of a decent message. This has to do, and these are live messages. None of them are in Connecticut, from across the country that was captured. And this kind of covers all those bullet points going forward. It identifies who they are, what the areas are impacted, what they need to do, and then follow-up information is stay tuned to local news for updates. That's kind of like that chemical fire hazmat, a well-crafted message going forward. It meets all the bullet points. This is one of those missing persons. This is a wander away, limited eyesight, does not drive, does not have a cell phone. So that answers a lot of the questions that people might ask. And we see these pop up. All of a sudden, you'll have a giant thread on social media, people asking about the individuals. So again, where was the person? When was she seen? Do we know what they have? And then most importantly, who do you reach? Who do you reach out to going forward? Those are the good messages. And I do maintain a collection of not so great messages. This is one of those, they're trying to squelch, they're trying to roll back whatever was happening. Something happened in the area. It's not believed to be an ongoing threat to the public. So that makes the authority not quite sure if it is or is not. So when crafting messages, and I'm guilty of this 1 or 2 times where I want to get the message out, have somebody else take a look at it. And we'll talk a little bit how CERT can help in this going forward. But this is an example of one of those messages that, they probably should have thought about it. They probably should have shared it internally. One of the big things that we like to do is kind of pre-plan. Everything we do in public safety is pre-plan. And this was going to be a great shelter-in-place message that they pre-planned. However, they launched the message without filling in the blanks. Again, these are live messages that went out to large communities. You'll see in here, it's insert the geographic area, which is one of our bullet points, and insert what's going on, which is one of our bullet points. Otherwise, they did a great message other than launching it because they forgot to do a couple things. Everybody has their feelings about social media, but and you talk about it, and I hope they do talk about it on your CERT when they talk about cyber threats. But directing people to an unknown website. Now, Bitly is a URL shortener. It's not really one of those things that I'm always comfortable clicking on. Maybe this would be more appropriate if they didn't want to say what was going on, but go to eldoradocounty.gov for more information and then modify that website. It should be pretty easy for them to pull up a banner on their municipal website. If they had spelt that out, I might be more likely to go and click on it going forward. But these anonymous kind of redirect URLs, you don't know what's behind that URL. Also, people sometimes send these to social media pages that require you to be logged in. So if you aren't an X or a Facebook subscriber, you might get to a logon page and you don't have an account. You can't read what's going on. So we kind of made it a point here in Connecticut that we would, only provide at the end of a message URLs and links after we always give that message out going forward. This is one of those messages that we absolutely don't advocate for. This is in Texas. They do wireless emergency alerts all the time for road closures on the highway. And this is one of those, if I'm driving my vehicle at 65, 75 miles an hour down the highway, and I enter the incident zone that's telling me that there's an accident ahead, I'm probably already past the exit by the time I get that message popping up on my screen. And if you also notice south of this, there's residential areas. Might be a little hard to see, but there's this whole area called Pinecrest Forest near this intersection, which is residential. If this was an intersection where they constantly put out wireless emergency alerts about highway closures, I'm going to unsubscribe. Then unfortunately, when there's the active shooter or there's the hazardous materials incident, I'm unsubscribed and it's not going to happen. So this is why we don't blast those on the highways all the time. Have we done them on I-95 for a couple incidents? Absolutely, when we had the bridge closures. And then we also did them when we had the bridge fires out in Groton, and then another incident in the Westbrook and East Lyme areas. But those are going to be for those, kind of directing the truckers or our targets. Get off the highway because we don't have another way going forward. I mentioned I don't do Connecticut alerts. This was not a CT alert message, but this is just a sample of a message that went to a school notification system. The school sent this out. This was the instruction that there's an active shooter on campus. This was a live exercise that happened in the school. Everybody in the school, including the students that had cell phones, the teachers, the staff, everybody on property knew because they put it over the announcement system. However, they did not notify the families of the students that were going to school who were on that notification list going forward. So knowing your audience, knowing who that reach is going to be, while this was an exercise for a school lockdown, there still should have been comments in about here, this is an exercise or this is a drill going forward. So if you're ever involved in any school emergency plans or anything along those lines and they want to do notifications to their school messenger systems or anything like that, please make sure that you have a whole set of templates going forward that it's very much specified. This is not real. This is an exercise or a drill. We need to accommodate everybody that we're communicating with. Multilingual is a beast in itself. While there is technology out there that does multilingual, in emergencies, it's very hard to get that into the right languages and to deliver it to the appropriate audiences. The federal government has started a program to mandate the cell phone carriers, which is great for commercial companies like ours. It'll be up to the cell phone carriers to be able to translate to the user's native language on their phone devices. So it doesn't matter if I can only translate to 5 or 6 languages correctly, even if I'm using AI. I don't know who downstream, whose phones acknowledge what language. The other thing is when people get emergency alerts, they kind of reduce their ability to comprehend what's going on. And I talked about that 30 seconds is about the max. Their ability to understand, say it bluntly, but big words and big instructions decreases. So we want to make sure that our information out is very straightforward. It's very basic with instructions. I mentioned that we are now the authority. We are sending the message on behalf of the city of so-and-so. So our facts need to be right. They need to be right the first time. Rolling that information back is very difficult. We lose that credibility. Making sure the audience, and I already mentioned about updates, and across multiple platforms. The last thing you want to do is have 5 city departments sending out 6 different types of messages, and we've seen it going forward. However, do not delay an alert if you can get an initial message out. If you need to share something immediately, put it out with the caveat in the message that we're still developing more information and we will send a follow-up. If you do say you're going to send a follow-up, of course, send it out. I talked about the overuse of the systems. Don't use police terminology like the BOL, be on the lookout, and abbreviations and going forward. So those are just kind of the high things that are going out. I mentioned before that one of the things you want to make sure in your follow-up communications, that the people that are impacted are the ones that get notified. Don't spend multiple hours trying to craft a public information release while I have an entire neighborhood on lockdown. they're a unique audience. They're the ones that need to be told what's going on. And then you can help develop your press release 45 minutes, later while you have the right team together, because that's going to go to a broader audience. Shelter in place, road closures, water main breaks, boil water. The goal is to make sure that you keep them updated during daylight hours appropriately. There are a few messages that we just let expire. We don't want everybody starting back down a street once it's cleared. We'd rather let them find out on their own, when the tree's been removed. So sometimes you have to be a little bit creative in that messaging going forward. Letting people know that the incident is over. Again, where can they find additional information? That's kind of the big one. Social media, news outlets, everybody is watching every message that goes out, and they're going to be the first ones that want to have it across the larger audience. So when you put those closure messages or you're finalizing the incident, make sure people understand where they can find additional information, where they need to go. So what can CERT do? This is great, Kevin, but I'm probably never going to have a login to CT Alert or mass notification. What can I do to help? Well, I said in the beginning that one of our big databases is that CT Alert database. Getting people to voluntarily provide their information. Where do they live? What are they concerned about? That can be in the CT Alert notification, or it can be in the municipal instances, towns and cities that have their own sign-up program. It can be, basically popping up a tent at a carnival or festival at our parade, providing literature to folks, being able to share a QR code going forward or something on those lines, answer their questions about mass notification. There's a lot of that kind of stuff going forward that we're seeing communities being able to help with going forward. Do you have any target hazards in your community? Absolutely. I'm sure everybody has some kind of target hazard. Can you work with your emergency management team and help identify those and help them develop templates? While you might not be the message senders, there's no reason why you can't work with them and say, hey, here's a target hazard based on some training and best practices. Here's the audience that might be notified. And then they can maybe provide you some templates to provide back to them going forward. But that's, your community's best. You know what happens. What people are interested in or what people are not interested in going forward. So kind of keep that in mind. Here's an example of a pre-plan that we have in the Norwich area, Norwich and Basra. One of the dams, the Antic Dam in Basra, unfortunately, 2 years ago was in danger of failing. It's still considered a high-risk dam. And if that dam were to release, it's a pretty significant area of inundation that can happen within an hour down to the Norwich harbor and basin. That includes the hospital, a couple senior housing areas, Route 2 intersection. So we've pre-built this message. We've pre-built the inundation area, and all the agencies from the public utilities, fire, police, the 911 center, the Red Cross, everybody knows that this is the message in the event of a dam failure that's going to be going out ahead of time. So they have it in their pocket. They have it ready to go if it's necessary. During incidents, again, depending on what your role is, wait for information to go out to the public before you start sharing it with your colleagues, your neighbors. Help identify those populations. That's a big one that we're always looking for. What people are, in danger, what people need assistance during the recovery, during the incident. How can we keep people kind of up to date? Are there people who always need just a telephone call going forward? Those kinds of things. Remember, your goal is to amplify the messaging. It's not to be able to send it or be an independent going forward. Some of the considerations for at a local level, you can help with your municipality for those staff and employee notifications and alerts. And I know some communities even have their search teams built into their local notification system. And that might be for deployment. That could also be for, hey, there's going to be training this week. So check with your emergency management officials. If you do have great use cases of using Everbridge for your teams, please share that with your colleagues in your regions going forward. I will reiterate the slide one more time, making sure that the message goes out to the right people, the right time, the right way. That's like one of the most important things that we want to make sure. We don't want to over notify people so they unsubscribe, but we don't want to hold back a system where we can be able to share information, whether it's internally, whether it's with our municipal employees, or whether it's downstream to the public. There's so many versions of this available going forward. As I mentioned, the CT alert training that I push out to 911 dispatches is about a 3-hour program. So alert and notifications is not just a quick, here's a PowerPoint or here's a YouTube video. You can see there's just a lot of facets, a lot of things going at it at the same time. If members have interest, they want to work with their emergency management officials, have the emergency management officials reach out to me directly or go through the Dennis regional coordinators. But I'd be happy to entertain some questions going forward. Mike, I don't know, Michael, I don't know if you ask for people's hands or you just let them come off mute, however they want to do it.
Yeah, folks are welcome to put some questions into the chat or come off mute and ask a question. This was a great presentation, great overview of how it works. I think for a lot of us in the room, we just don't know where those messages come from or, you know, how they're created and what the criteria is. So does anyone have any questions? I'll start with one. So with the rep exercise in Wyndham, we had a rehearsal and then we had the evaluated. Were you involved in that in as far as the rehearsal or messaging for that event in case there was a true emergency?
So for that particular exercise, no. However, the mass notification platform, CT Alert, Everbridge, iPause, wireless emergency alerts are a big part of the entire radiological emergency plan with Millstone, with the impacted communities, with the host communities, and obviously across the entire state. So every year we have the Millstone exercises, and we're doing messaging from the state EOC to notify all of the state shareholders, to all of the impacted towns to share information or where they can jump on the teams. And then obviously, if there were a real notification or a real incident, we'd be using every tool at our disposal to communicate with the public of what's happening around the Millstone area or the host communities going forward.
I bring this up because there's a few CERT members in the room tonight that were evacuees at the exercise. So I wanted to see if there was a correlation between what they participated in. You talked a little bit about messaging going out in various languages. Is there anything else along the lines with accessibility for hearing impaired, eyesight, things like that for messaging?
So that's why we call multimodal communication. That's why we can do telephone calls, traditional landlines, text messages, post to social media, post to websites. If there's a way that people can communicate, we're going to be targeting it. We have not implemented it in Connecticut yet. We're waiting for the multilingual features to become enabled. There's even services out there where we can provide our alert notification to the American Sign Language contractors, and they can actually take that message and do an ASL recording of it, and we can share that with people going downstream. That's in the future plans. It's not there today. Again, the language is probably number one enhancement that we want to tackle. But again, not everybody has the ability to text message. Not everybody watches social media all day long. So that's why we still do traditional telephone calls. We still like having email. We still post up the website. So hopefully when somebody clicks, answers, picks up, they're going to have a message in front of them going forward.
So you mentioned that, I guess Connecticut adopted this system in 2009, right?
That's correct. Yep. Connecticut was the first state to adopt a statewide mass notification system. I know our size kind of plays into that, but we've become a model for some significant deployments across the country, including New Jersey, Florida, Oregon, Texas, I already said New Jersey, Cook County, Illinois, Vermont, Massachusetts. They've all adopted the same model where we allow statewide mass notifications. So you don't have to pick your municipality only.
Was there an event that triggered that in 2008 or 2009?
So Everbridge themselves is a post 9/11 company. They took some commercial notification platforms and built that out to public alert and notifications. And it probably took that long in 2007, 2008, where they probably put out the request for proposals and request for information. They realized that they don't have a tool in place. Now, there was a service called Reverse 911, similar kind of program, but it wasn't able to expand. It wasn't able to have other types of notification going forward. And we basically adopted that original idea of whether you're in a database, whether you're subscribed, you're coming from our list and we're going to call you in a life safety emergency.
I don't know if you want to go down the rabbit hole, but what system was in place on 9/11? Or how were we notified besides just watching the news and watching what was happening?
Yeah, so the news was number one. Now, it really didn't impact Connecticut, but the emergency alert system, the EAS, which is your television alerts, your national, your AM radio and NOAA weather radio alerts. Those come back, from the war days when, people, it was like that, the shelter alerts would come across your broadcast TV. So that was the system that they had available in place. But the events during 9/11 just happened so quickly during that, and people couldn't really wrap around what was going on. Jump forward to, I know it's many years, but you jump forward to COVID. We never thought that we would be doing statewide notifications. That was never in anybody's plan to use the system to notify, at that point, all 4.2 million contacts with a message from the governor. That was kind of a big deal. Normally that's a neighborhood, maybe it's a city, maybe it's 2 or 3 towns that are having a specific geographical event. But we were able to leverage the system. It has the capabilities to do that. And, we were able to come through on that.
There's a question for you there, Kevin.
Yep. So I see the Everbridge has an app. Do we need to use the app in addition to the CT alert system? So of course we have a couple apps. One of them, the Everbridge app, that is for receiving messages. That's how you will get alerted. Depending on how your profile's signed up, if you go to CT Alert right now and you create a profile as a citizen, as a resident, it's actually going to drive you to the Everbridge public safety app, where your profile, whatever you signed up for, will be there, and you can be notified as a citizen, as a resident. If you're part of a CERT team or you're part of a municipal entity, we're still using the Everbridge app for alerting, and your team leaders, whoever manages it, can get you on that. There's one more app that's more for people that are in charge of the team and state officials, and that's for, we can actually send a message. We can use our app. In case I'm not in front of my tablet or my computer, we can send a basic notification from the field. But that's not necessarily, Kate, something that we roll out to everybody. But the Everbridge app for receiving messages, and Everbridge Public Safety for being in the role of a citizen.
With the advent of satellite radio and people listening to podcasts and things on their phone in the car, is there a way to interject messaging when folks are using that type of technology?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, the wireless emergency alerts and the EAS, they are going to be integrated. They actually have started integrating with those commercial satellite providers. So you could be going down the road listening to your favorite XM or your favorite notification system, and even some of the radio entertainment systems now are equipped with kind of a built-in override. So that's something that's coming. The technology is there. It's happening in places across the country, but it's very, very dependent on all those different providers taking guidance from the FCC. That's really when the FCC says your radios or your car entertainment systems, we should call them that now, need to be able to alert when we push a message out. That's going to take a lot of influence, but it is coming. We have seen it.
So for our CERT members in the room, their priorities in most emergencies will be setting up a shelter or guiding folks into safe areas. So I like that you touched upon the point of keeping the messaging the same. You know, we're not going to add to it. We're not going to deviate from whatever was sent out. We want to make sure that it stays the same. Just remind us again how we can sign up or how we can ensure that all of us in the room and all of our family members will get the alerts.
Yep. So I'll drop the link in there. It's very simple. It's ctalert.gov. And that's the starting point if you are a citizen, if you want to be able to make sure you get messages to protect yourself and be safe. So that's the statewide alert and notification system. Now, many municipalities kind of have that little bit of lower version. So check what you have on your municipal website. Check with your emergency management official. Hey, does our town have their own mass notification system outside of CT Alert? Most of them are going to say yes, they have something in place, and we make sure that the alerting escalates going forward. So
that's an important deviation difference that your selectman may send out or your EMD may send out a message, but it may not come from the state, right?
Right. Yeah, and those alerts would be kind of the routine. You know, the cooling shelter is going to be at this location, or the recovery center. The emergency is kind of already in progress and they're sharing new information. We're fortunate though, as a vendor, if people sign up for my municipality's alerting system, they're going to end up eventually in CT Alert also at the same time. So if we do have a life safety message, we'll be pulling from that database at the same time. Just kind of as your emergency and your tools kind of go up the chain, up the food chain in terms of priority, the pool of data that we can pull from gets larger and larger.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Kevin? He was gracious enough to join us after hours on a Tuesday. Kevin, I can't thank you enough, my friend, for joining us tonight and sharing this. This is recorded, so I'll edit it and package it for YouTube for perpetuity, and it'll be out there. For everyone else, our next webinar is August 18th. It's our hurricane preparedness webinar, and we'll have a meteorologist from Demison and also a guest speaker from one of the Carolinas. I think it's North Carolina will be joining us. Her name is Robin. And for everyone in the room, you'll get a link to this webinar and also the links that Kevin shared to sign up for CT Alert in an email tomorrow. And I wish everyone a good night and be safe. Thank you, Kevin.